Okay, so we went ahead and did some uniform floats based on the parent class. Now, the other thing that we can do is if we want some of these to take up different spaces, as long as they still fit within the grid mathematically, then we can work with that. So for instance, like maybe we want the first picture to take up 50% of the grid, and then maybe another 25, 25, 25, 25, or something like that. Or maybe we want the next line to take up thirds or whatever. So let's do something a little bit different. Let's go ahead, in this case, let's go ahead and take the class off of the parent so that it goes back to being a full thing, right? And then the next thing that we could do is let's go back here and I'm gonna come down in the CSS. Let me get rid of the JavaScript thing, and then I'm gonna create a new comment that says float item with classes. And let's think about this. Let's first of all, let's think about a class that could be applied to each individual list item, right? So maybe if we wanted to do sort of a grid structure, the first thing we could do is maybe think about, 10, 20, 30, 3, 30%, 40%, and so on. Let's just go ahead and start creating this structure. So I'm going to create a class that's called 10. Actually, yeah, let's do 10. And okay, and I'll just type width, and then we'll say 10%, right? And then we're just going to keep going just like this. So I'll copy this. Let's make the next one, let's say that it's 20. And you could do any number of different ones, as long as mathematically they're going to end up working out. And let's do one that's 30. Let's just do a regular 30. And then what we'll do next is we'll also do 33%. So let's say 33. And then I'll do this one at, 33.33, whatever, right? A lot of threes. Okay. And that's going to be, the more threes you add, the more accurate it's going to be. The next one we could do could be 40, right? And we'll say width is 40%, like that. And here, I'll just copy this again. All right, and I want you to just keep on doing this, and so you don't have to watch me type. I'm going to just paste this in so that you can see what I've got. All right, so after 40, I also did 45 because, maybe there's a reason I would want it. Probably not, but yeah, maybe. And I went to 50, 60, 66. I did 66 because if you're doing one that is 66, you might be able to then do two more that are 33, or actually four more on the same block. 70, 75, 75 would accommodate something that's 25%, and so on, right? All right, and so you can kind of just think about the different mathematical blocks that you could have that would work within a grid. So let's actually go and apply these things now. And you might look at this and go, wait a second, what about this where it says 4li? Well, okay, that's because if we applied this to the parent where it's the class of 4 on the unordered list, then it would cascade down to the list item. What we're going to do instead is actually apply it directly to each list item. All right, so if I come over here, what I need to do for each li is I need to put a space and then the word class, all right, and then equals. And actually, if you allow it to just finish it for you, you can say class, all right, equals, and then I'm going to leave this blank for just a second. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this, including that little space right there. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm just going to go paste it inside of each list item like this. Here, I'll collapse this so it's easier to see what I'm doing. All right, and then I'll have an empty class, and then I can start to think about how I want each of these to be arranged. Well, let's say, for instance, I want the first one to be 50%. So we'll say 50. All right, and then you'll see that that only takes up 50% now. Well, that means that I could do another one that's 50%, or I could do, a whole bunch that are 10%, for instance. I could do like 5, but then I would have to do a whole lot more, right? And that's not actually going to work because then 50%, it might not be, it wouldn't work because we don't have enough images. The other thing is that we could do 25, 25, 25, and 25, so that would give us 4 more pictures. So let's do that. Let's say 25. All right, and I'm just going to copy this. And before I do, this didn't go up here, so I'm wondering if I forgot to, yep, I did. I forgot to type one that was for 25. All right, I just sort of missed the boat on that one. So I'm going to copy this, and let's go back in here, and we'll say 25, and we'll change this to 25%. Okay, and then you'll see that that automatically pops up there. Now I can copy this. I'll just copy it, and I'm going to paste it here, and should be, yeah, updating for me, and then here, and then you'll see that this is kind of working out for me now. One thing that you're going to notice that is problematic right here is that there's like a, depending on how you're zoomed in or how you're scaled, there's like a little bit of a gap underneath, and that can change also depending on how you've got this scaled, and it's a really weird thing in the way that it renders out the size. And so without using JavaScript to make this absolutely perfect, there's some little fixes that you would have to do. So there are some JavaScript libraries and plugins that you can use to do similar kinds of things, where you've probably seen, it's like called masonry, where it just fits things on the page. And we're not doing that. All right, we're not getting into that just yet. I'm showing you sort of like a really simpler way of doing this, but you're going to see some issues, and we'll deal with them in terms of like maybe there's like a little visual gap or something here and there, or maybe the floats don't work right exactly. But I'm going to show you some other ways that you can deal with that and still use this method. Okay, so let's say maybe the next line that we want those to be 33%. So I'm going to copy the name of this class. Remember that the dot goes in the CSS, but it doesn't go up here inside of the value for the attribute. So if I put 33 here, and I put 33 here, and I put 33 there, right, then we now have this grid work. And then we've got, looks like 2 pictures left, so maybe those can be 50. All right, so I'll copy that, and we'll paste that there, right? And so now we've got this grid of pictures, and it could have been any different number of, you know, arrangements. One thing though that you're going to find with this particular method without using JavaScript is that unless you structure your CSS very differently, or excuse me, your HTML and your CSS differently, the problem is that you're not really going to be able and here, I'll show you how to address what is happening here in just a second. But anyway, what you're not going to really be able to do is you're not going to be able to put smaller pictures first, like, because the reason is that what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to stack in a row. They're not going to want to go 1, 2, and then jump down to 3, 4. You would have to have a containing wrapper around it that forces it to be contained, right? So that's not going to work. You'd have to have literally a different HTML structure. So the way that it would have to go is that the bigger pictures have to be loaded up first, and then the smaller pictures would then have to float to fill up the space that's remaining, and then you would come back down to the next line. Okay, so you'll see that something weird just happened whenever I rescaled, and it seems like it sort of jumps and it works in some places and it doesn't in others, and you might wonder why. Well, part of the reason is that if I blow this up, you'll notice that it just flipped again because I scaled. See this little gap where my mouse is hovering, right? Right there, it is a problem right there because of the way that it's sort of rendering the math and fixing the spacing that's inside, and it's not an exact perfection. And then whenever I scale back out, it does this weird thing. One of the things that you can do to kind of effectively deal with that is you can remember, if you go back to what I said before about using a clear class, C-L-E-A-R, clear, what you could do is you could say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th list item, you could tell it to clear anything that came before it so that it doesn't want to get bumped. And what's happening is that when I'm scaled out like this, for some reason, well, I know the reason, it's for right now, it's rendering this first picture to be just a tiny hair taller than the space that these 4 take up in height. Okay, and so what it does is it's saying, oh, well, I won't fit underneath this. I have to jump over here now. So it's fitting here instead of coming all the way back over to the beginning of the row. Whereas whenever I do this, You know, in some screens, if I scale it up, it's not even doing it now, but in some of the other screens, when I scale, you see that I get a gap right there. Well, because it's doing the math in a weird way, uh, and it's just rendering it, and when I'm talking about, you know, fractions of a percent, it still would make a difference in the way it floats. So if we apply a clear class on the sixth element, then we won't have that trouble. So if I come down at the bottom here and I create a new rule, let's just call it clear. I'm going to call it clear all. We had something that we commented out earlier called clear fix. That's not what we're going to use. We're going to use this thing called clear all that I'm going to create. And all I'm going to do is tell it to clear both. So it'll clear any floats, whether it's left or right. And then I'm going to apply this clear all class. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to add that class to the sixth list item. And I don't know why that just, hold on, that visibly just went away. Let's go back here and do this layout. Okay, and I got it back. And sometimes, by the way, if that happens, what you might have to do is if it collapses it all the way over here, you might have to grab it from the edge and pull it back out. I think that's what happened for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, but the thing that I was showing you that I wanted to do is I created this clear all class, and now I need to apply clear all. I had mentioned that I need to do it to the sixth list item. So I'm going to collapse these again so I can easily count them. I think that sometimes that's just easier when you've got a lot of the same elements in a row. All right, so I've got, and remember, I need it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's this sixth item that needs to clear all of the previous floats that came before it. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this one would be 6. Now the way that you add a class to something that already has a class assigned to it is that you can add multiple classes. So you would put a space here, and then you would just type the class name, clear all. All right, and then what it does is it applies both classes. That's why you can't have a space inside of your class names, because the space indicates that it's looking for the next argument or the next parameter that gets passed into the attribute's value. Okay, and so now whenever I scale it bigger, you see it doesn't start flipping out and doing a really wonky weird thing, right? It just clears it every time. Right, even though sometimes I get this weird little white line, but I'll show you how, you know, one of the ways that you might want to address that. All right, and so this seems to be working, and if you had to do a clear on this last one, you could do that. But I don't, on a line that has everything being the same height, in this case, these 33, 33, 33, then it shouldn't give you that problem. But if you wanted to be certain, you could come back over here and you could also add clear all as a class there too, and you shouldn't have any issues with it. Okay. All right. So that's kind of a cool thing, right? And then you could also monkey around and play with different configurations. This is definitely not the only way that you can do this. Like, you know, you could have a line of 4, you could have a line of 2, a line of 3, whatever, right? You can just mess around with this however you want, okay? And then if you want, you could also duplicate, you know, you could duplicate this list and have a second instance of it or something. But before we do that, in the next video, I want to show you how you can apply padding to these, because it's not as straightforward as you might think, okay?